Hey guys, Joe here with Local Pro Helper, and in this video I'm going to discuss the 3 things that you need to know as a business owner. So most, business owners, they think running a business is very difficult, and when you're stuck in the day-to-day of running that business, then it is pretty difficult. Because if you're still installing and answering the phone calls and emails, if you're working 60 plus hours a week, you really don't have much time to work on the business because you're constantly working in the business, right? So that's the step number 1, is how to figure out how to drastically cut down your hours, so then you can start, actually working on the business. And that's what I am, the whole goal of the channel is to get you to work less and earn more. Like, that's what I want, okay? And so we're gonna go over these 3 things. So the first one is that you need to have a way of getting customers, okay? Second thing you need is you need to be able to produce the jobs once you sell to those customers, right? And then the third and final thing is knowing your numbers. Now, a lot of people look at it the reverse, where you really should know your numbers, inside and out, and have them dialed in and everything else, and then you can work on really growing the business. But I'm actually on the opposite end of that spectrum, and I completely disagree. Because if you can't get the rest of your crap together, well, it doesn't matter if you know your numbers or not, because if you don't have customers coming in the door and you can't produce the jobs for those customers, you're not going to have a business anyway. So that's the way I look at it. It's how the business model I followed. It's what I'm currently in right now. Basically, if you haven't heard the story, basically I've been in business since the end of 2015, but it wasn't really a business at that point. It was just a side hustle to make some money. And I was able to grow the business. Last year, we almost hit $2 million in sales. And then this year, the goal is $3 million. But the more I look at it, I think I can end up getting higher than that. And meanwhile, it's snowing every other day, and we don't really have many jobs or calls going on right this second. But we'll figure that out. So anyway, going back. First thing you need to do is to get these jobs, right? You have to get the customers come in the door. You got to get the phone to ring. You got to sell the job, all that kind of good stuff. Well, there's 2 things that you need to be working on. The first thing is the sales, and the second thing is the marketing. So what's the difference? Well, marketing is the way of getting people to come in the door, and the sales is the way of getting those people, once they come in the door, of actually booking the jobs. Now, as far as getting the people to call, I'm like a machine at that. I have no problem getting a million leads coming in. Last year, in fact, I looked at my call volume. We had 7,500 phone calls in 2020. That doesn't include all the emails. That doesn't include all the people that use the online price tool. So in all, we probably had a good 12,000 plus people that walked in, came in the door, more or less, right? Well, leads. So even if you cut that in half, if everyone contacted us twice, you're looking at 6,000. But where we really struggled at, even though, like I said, we hit 2 million in sales, is our sales. So that is probably the worst aspect of our business right this very second. We've put in systems for everything else, but the sales has been severely lacking. At this point, we close abysmal 5 to 7% at this point. And the reason why that is because we never put attention and focus on it. I've always been a firm believer in, because I always had this mental block of, I'm not a salesman, right? I don't want to be the used car salesman, And so what I focused on is just getting the phone to ring, which I can do that really well now, especially with Google Ads and everything else. If you need the phone to ring, I can help you with that. And there'll be links hopefully in the video if I remember. If not, just look in the channel about Google Ads and things like that. It'll show you what to do. Okay. So that's the number 1. That's the marketing piece. And also with that is things like social media, the posting that you do on there. Now, this is another area where I'm not the best at. I'm really good at just paying for leads and getting them to come in. But as far as the social media and everything else, you basically just have to post at least once a day. Ideally 2 and 3 times a day. If you follow someone like Gary V, he says basically post as much as you humanly possibly can, right? So for this, if you're in the fencing industry, you probably have heard of Joe Everest. He is great at it. Let's just put it that way. He has a great personality. People you'll just watch a video and you will just trust him immediately. But he has you just got to watch his stuff if you haven't seen any of it. He's got a YouTube channel. That's done really well. And the social media is great. He does Ask Fence Guy Fridays or Fence Gal Fridays, one of them. And we're probably going to do something similar. So if you need help with the social media aspect, look at what he's doing. And also, like, I just started looking on Instagram for different stuff. And there's some people that are absolutely killing it on Instagram and everything else. So I'm taking notes from them, and we're just going to hit the ground running once the snow leaves. Right. And then the next part is the sales. So like I said, the sales part, I am the worst at. The way we looked at everything, again, is I would just bring customers in the door or leads in the door. And because of our good reviews and stuff like that, and just a sheer number of leads coming in, like, we can book enough jobs. But what I noticed last year is we had so many calls coming in that we were ill prepared for that, number one. Number two, the salesperson I had wasn't the best, and that comes down to me as well because I didn't focus on it. I was down the shore. I didn't care. Like, we were booking jobs. Month of May, we booked $300,000 worth of jobs, and like, things were good. But looking back, like, they could have been a lot better. In fact, like I said, we hit about $2 million in sales. We probably could have been $2.5, $3 million without really trying that much harder, just because there was like 50 to 80 people a day calling. So if you can't like convert, if you're getting that many people to call, like, it's not that hard, right? So that's the one thing. So that's the big push that we're doing this year is the one thing we did change up, and if you're not familiar with it, which is Tom Reber and the Contractor Fight, along with the Contractor Sales Academy, we had signed up for that last year and put it in place pretty early on, or actually not in a place. We only did tidbits here and there. But that's where where we start charging for consultations. So instead of, we were going out for 50, 60 quotes a week, then we switched it up and we only went out to like 8. And we were booking the same amount of jobs. If we went out to 8 to 10 quotes, we booked like 7 to 9 of them jobs. Whereas before we were going out to 50 and 60 and booking like 8 anyway. So if you're currently doing everything within your business, if you just start charging for consultations, it will drastically help you. Now, like I said, we went through the system, but we haven't fully utilized it. We're actually working on that right now. And then I'm also looking at different books like Jordan Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street. And so I'm in the middle of this. I actually listened to it before, but I never was really involved with the sales at all. They actually don't want me to be involved with the sales because a lot of times I will just say yes too often to what we do or don't do, which leads to a lot of issues, which a lot of businesses do, where you are offering to do way too many services or you're doing something that's outside of your wheelhouse. And what happens is you end up making a lot less money. So I'm working on that, but I made the decision that I'm going to start selling these freaking fences. Like, that's what's going to happen. And I have to get out that mental block that I'm not a salesperson, which I'm not a salesperson, but I can absolutely talk to people on the phone without a problem. So I'm going to be doing that. So anyway, going back, and step number 2 is producing those jobs. Now, like I said, last year for May, we booked $300,000 worth of jobs, which is pretty damn good, considering we only did $2 million in sales. Like, whatever percent, they just came from that month alone. And but what we found is, even though we booked $300,000 worth of jobs, we were only able to produce about $150,000 if we were lucky. So what we end up doing is, I always have my in-house crews, and then talking to Dave down in Florida, and basically said, just get subs. So, like everyone else that doesn't use subs, you're like, I don't want to use another company, and I deal with the issues and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not the case. Like, if you find the right ones, it's kind of like finding the right employees. Well, they make your life so much easier. And the nice part is, when you want to add additional crews, well, you don't need all the expenses that are, with that new crew. So you don't have to buy the truck, the trailer, the equipment, and this and that. And not only that, with those expenses, then you have to worry about, okay, well, what happens if I'm not busy enough in the wintertime? I don't want to just hire these people and then let them go. Like, for me, I feel personally responsible for my employees, like for their well-being and everything else. So with hiring subs, well, you don't really have to worry about that because they can just get jobs from other companies, and then you just have that conversation as well. It's like, look, I'm going to need you for probably, these following months. And then after that's going to, dry up. And it's usually they're like, no problem. I'll just find work somewhere else. But if you find the right employees or you find the right subcontractors, well, what ends up happening, it becomes more of a partnership. And it works really well. Now, it doesn't always go without a hitch. Like the sub that I'm using was awesome last year. He was only giving me one crew, and this year he's giving me two. But then there were started to be issues, like small stuff here and there, and it's just getting a little bit more and more. And what it is he went from one crew to two, so it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but you're basically producing double the output. And then not only that is, like, he used to be more involved with just the one crew, but now he's got his attention split to two, right? So that's where you can't get frustrated. If you're working with a sub that has potential, what you end up having to do is just work with them. Like, I'm going to work with him and get him to be where he needs to be. Because at the end of the day, the more successful you can make your employees or you can make your subcontractors, the more successful they're going to make you. It's kind of like the law of attraction and everything else. Like, you have to give before you receive, right? So that's why I do videos like this, and I hope that eventually you will hire me as a consultant or something else like that. But typically I'm not really selling anything. It's just I'm giving you my information, trying to tell you what I believe and what works for me, and hopefully it helps you, right? So anyway, you got that. So if you have an issue with the production side, again, look in the subs and stuff like that. Now, if you are can't find any or don't know where to find them, well, I did a video about that. I just have to post it, so that'll be soon. And basically, just using Facebook. The reason why I use Facebook is because you can basically stalk that person when they apply. We had someone that applied, and he ended up standing me up, and it was a mess. But I didn't end up hiring him. But afterwards, I looked at his profile, and everything was, he just got out of jail and F the police and this and that. And thank God he didn't show up, because it just would have been a mess, right? So look into Facebook. It makes it very simple, because everyone puts their life on there, right? So you'll get a good idea what they're like. And then finally is knowing the numbers. Now, again, in my opinion, you need to learn how to sell, bring in the lead. You have to get, okay, let's go back. So there's a few things you need to learn to do before you even know your numbers, in my opinion. You have to get the phone to ring. You have to be able to sell the job, and then you have to be able to produce the job. If you can do those three things, then you worry about the fourth, which is knowing your numbers, right? Now, I know in the video I said three things, but technically it's four. So anyway, we got that. When it comes to knowing your numbers, it's very simple. Like most people, I did the same thing where I made it too difficult. And a lot of times you're in such a financial situation that you don't want to know your numbers, right? And because it's much easier to live in ignorance than it is to know your numbers when they're extremely shitty. But the sooner you can rip off that Band-Aid, the sooner that you can end up making progress. Now, for the last few years, my mentality was, and for my wife as well, is just book more jobs. Like, how are we doing? Doesn't matter, book more jobs. If you can relate, like, hit thumbs up or whatever. But you got to get away from that mentality. Booking more jobs doesn't help, right? If you say you're only 3 weeks out or 2 weeks out or whatever else, or a week and a half, and you're like, I just got to book more jobs, or you're 6 weeks, and I'm like, book more jobs. It doesn't really do anything, because it's kind of like playing darts, with a blindfold on. Like, you're not sure where the target is or anything else. You're just throwing darts. So you might hit your numbers, you may not. You may survive the winter, you may not. But how would you possibly know if your whole goal is just to book more jobs, right? So in this, I'm a firm believer in working. This came from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and that's basically start with the end in mind. So what that means is basically figure out what you want for your personal life, and then also for your business. And then from that information, then you could start working backwards and figure out how many jobs you need to book, how many hours you got to work, and all that kind of good stuff. And for that, I do have a program. It's called the Profit Planner. Now, it is free for the first 30 days. Sorry, the dogs are barking. And then after that, it's just $7 a month at the time of this recording. Like, it's dirt cheap, and it'll like help you put a mental picture of like what needs to happen. The way it does it, again, is you're going to figure out, you got to plan your destiny, right? Otherwise, it just kind of happens to you. So for that, what you have to do is figure out what you need in your personal life, as far as mortgage and gas and electric and food bill and spending money and, insurance and whatever else you need for your personal life. You figure out whatever that number is. Let's just say it's $100,000. And whatever you need, just add 20% to that. So if you need 100, it's 120. Make sense? You're going to do the same thing for your business. So for this, you're going to include your employees, but you're not including the employees that actually produce the jobs. The reason why you're not including them is because that's more of like a cost of goods sold kind of deal. Okay, so you're really going to include, like, if you have like a secretary or a person answer the phone or whatever, supervisor, basically anyone that's not producing the work for you. Okay. Then along with that, you got to do your insurance. If you have obviously you have vehicles, but your vehicle insurance. If you have a location like a warehouse or whatever, you figure out all that. Your advertising, and then you also want to make sure you include something called profit. Because at the end of the year, you don't want to work just to make enough to basically survive. And plus, if something like, COVID happens again, you want to make sure you have a nest egg set aside in case something happens, right? So for the profit, same thing as, for your personal, whatever it may be. So if you want to do like, $1,000 a month, $1,000 a week, whatever it may be, whatever that number turns out to be for the end of the year, add 20% to that. So what you'll end up having is, let's pretend, just to throw out whole numbers, that you need 400 grand for your business, and then you need 120 grand for your personal. You divide that number by 52, and that gives you 10 grand per week that you need. Simple enough, which the profit planner does for you. And you can do this pen and paper. So then after you do that, what you're going to do is figure out what your average profit per job is. And this is gross profit. So to figure that out, if you don't know, it's basically just take your total price minus your materials minus labor, and that is your gross profit. So for this, let's say, it's, $7,000 for the job, $3,000 for material, $2,000 for labor. So you're left with $2,000, and that's your average job. Okay, now if you don't know what your average job, again with the profit planner, you can put them in and it'll figure out what everything is for you. And so it's $2,000. So what that means is you need $10,000 a week. Divided by $2,000 means you need to book 5 jobs per week. Not only book 5 jobs, but you need to be able to produce 5 jobs per week. So you can look at those numbers and see where you're at. If you're able to produce that many jobs, or if you're able to sell that many jobs. If not, then you got to fix whatever you're falling short on. Right? So then after that, it makes it simpler. Right? Because then you can figure out, okay, I am selling enough jobs, or I'm not selling enough jobs, or I'm producing enough, or I'm not. So then you can figure out what you need to do. And then at least now it gives you a game plan on what you need to do. Because instead of saying, okay, I need to book more jobs, and that's all your mentality is, which is a shitty way to think. And it's horrible for your mentality as well, because you're always just constantly stressed that you need to book more jobs. Well, instead, if you change it to where it's, I need to book 5 jobs. Well, that makes it much easier, and it gives you something to shoot for, because at the end of the day, if you have a goal of what to hit, you're much more likely to hit it, as opposed to saying, I need to book more jobs, right? So there's that. And then obviously if you're in a seasonal business, like where, if it's outdoors or whatever it may be, maybe you need to tweak it where most of your jobs are in the, spring and summer. So maybe you need to book 8 and 9 jobs during, certain months. And then during the winter months, you have to book just 2 jobs, right? Just do that. And then that's really all you got to do. The other piece of the puzzle is obviously the hours that you're working. So again, with the profit planner, it figures it out for you. And then once you start learning your numbers, you'll realize it's one big equation, and you can actually tweak all your numbers to get to whatever your desired outcome may be. If you don't want to work as much, well, figure out how to do the higher profit items, or, if you offer multiple services, well, you'll be able to actually see which ones are more profitable than the other ones. But again, the money is only the one aspect. But then with the profit planner, it'll also tell you, for an average job of, type A, like you might have to work 15 hours for that job, whereas type B, you might only have to work 10, and type C, you only have to work 5. So again, with the profit planner, it'll show you what'll happen, and there's things in it called the future planner, which it will basically tell you what's going to happen to your business if you made any changes before you made those changes. Because a lot of times what happens with business owners is they are afraid to make any adjustments to their business because, you know, you've been doing this for a few years or however long you've been doing it for, and it's been a constant struggle, but it's your struggle, and you basically have this ball of mess, but this ball of mess is producing the money so that way you can keep your home and, you know, be comfortable and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, basically the fear of unknown, of, you know, changing something is way worse than just dealing with the day-to-day bullshit that you deal with every day, right? But that's where the profit planner comes in, and it basically will show you, well, if you tweak this or you tweak this slightly, or instead of doing all these jobs, if you start phasing out one slowly, well, you go from 80 hours a week down to 60 hours a week. Or the best one is it'll show you what happens, you know, if you're still installing whatever you do. So if you install decks or fences or kitchens or whatever, it'll show you what'll happen if you start having a crew do that for you instead. And what'll happen is you'll see that you'll go from like 80 hours a week down to like 40, like instantly. It's that simple. So anyway, you can check it out. There's gonna be videos in the description, like I said, as far as the other 3 areas. So, and I kind of, sorry, it's not 3 numbers, really 4 numbers. And so again, it's to get the people to call, to book the jobs, to produce the jobs, and then to know your numbers. So there'll be links in that for different videos that'll help you on your way. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and I will respond to them. No one really does it, but I'm pretty much committed to do like 4 videos a week, 4 to 5. And I can only do that if I have ideas on what to talk about, because otherwise it's going to be pointless. But anyway, you know, put it in there and I'll answer the question for you, and I'll do it within a video, because if you have the question, then I'm sure other people are having that too. So anyway, have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.